Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into something fundamental. Habits, not just, personal quirks, but the actual drivers of success and failure too, right? For individuals, companies, even whole societies.
That's exactly it. We're looking closely at the work of Charles Duhigg here, and it's deeper than just tips for productivity.
Right.
His main point is that real control over your life, it comes from understanding how habits actually work, neurologically, how they form.
And how to change them. He talks about this will to believe being key.
Yeah, and interestingly, he argues that belief isn't just something you start with, it's something you build. It gets solidified, reinforced by actually doing the new habits, by making them work.
That's fascinating. So, okay, our mission today, unpack this core mechanism, this habit loop he talks about.
The three parts, yeah.
And see how it applies to, well, everything. Weight loss, huge product launches, even legal responsibility. It's everywhere.
It really is. And the first thing to grasp is that this loop, this structure, it's the same whether the habit is, super productive or completely destructive.
Okay, so let's define it. What are the pieces of the loop? The components.
Right, so think of it as like a little cycle in your brain. It always kicks off with the cue.
The trigger.
Exactly. A trigger that tells your brain, okay, switch to automatic mode now. It could be anything, a time, a place, seeing someone, even just feeling a certain way.
Like the clock hitting 3 p.m. or walking past the coffee machine.
Perfect examples. So the cue happens, and boom, it triggers the routine.
Which is the habit itself.
Right. The action.
Right.
Physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Grabbing that snack, mindlessly scrolling your phone, maybe snapping at someone when you're stressed.
And the routine then leads to the reward.
The payoff. That's what satisfies whatever craving was lurking underneath. And crucially, the reward tells the brain, hey, that worked. Let's remember this loop.
So if the reward's good, the loop gets stronger, easier to repeat next time.
Exactly. And this whole sequence, cue, routine, reward, gets stored, physically stored, in a part of the brain called the basal ganglia.
Which is a pretty old part of the brain, right? Primitive.
Very primitive. And this storing process is called chunking. The brain takes a sequence of actions like, say, all the little muscle movements involved in backing your car out of the driveway and bundles it into one smooth, automatic routine.
So our primitive brain is basically running autopilot for a lot of what we do. Why? Why did we evolve like this?
Simple answer. Efficiency. Your brain is always looking for ways to save effort.
Makes sense.
Think about it. If you had to consciously decide every single step of walking or brushing your teeth or driving, you'd be mentally wiped out before lunch.
Yeah, no kidding.
So chunking habits frees up mental energy. Duhigg says it allows us to focus on higher level stuff, like inventing spears, irrigation systems, and eventually airplanes and video games.
That's the upside, the evolutionary advantage. But there's a catch, isn't there? Which is why bad habits are so sticky.
Huge catch. The basal ganglia, it doesn't judge. It can't tell the difference between a good habit, like, going for a run when you feel stressed, and a bad one, like lighting up a cigarette.
Oh, right.
It just stores the loop if the reward is delivered, which means those bad habits, they don't really get erased.
We're just dormant.
Exactly. Duhigg says they're lurking there, waiting for the right cues and rewards to pop back up. That's why just trying to, white-knuckle it and stop a bad habit often doesn't work long-term.
Okay, so this leads us to the real driver behind the loop. It's not just the routine, it's the craving.
Yes. The craving is the engine. It's what anticipates the reward. It links the cue to the payoff. If there's no craving driving it, the loop doesn't become automatic.
And businesses have gotten incredibly good at tapping into or even creating those cravings.
Oh, absolutely. Cinnabon is the classic example he uses. It's kind of funny, but revealing. They often put their shops away from the food court.
Why would they do that? Seems counterintuitive.
Because they want that smell, that incredibly distinct, powerful smell, to hit you on its own. Undiluted, it wafts out, it's a super strong cue, bypasses your rational brain, and triggers this intense craving for that sugary, fatty reward.
Wow. Targeted sensory assault.
Pretty much. But sometimes, what looks like the craving isn't the real craving. The Febreze story is brilliant for illustrating this.
Ah, yes, the Febreze turnaround. It was a flop at first, wasn't it?
Total dud. Procter & Gamble made this stuff that worked perfectly. It eliminated odors, but nobody bought it.
Why not? If it worked.
Well, the researchers eventually figured it out. People who live with persistent smells, like, lots of pets or smoke, they become nose blind to it.
They can't smell the problem anymore.
Right. So if you can't smell the bad odor, There's no cue. And if there's no cue, there's no craving for odor elimination. The product solved a problem people didn't perceive.
So P&G had to find a different angle, a different craving to tap into.
Exactly. They observed people using it and found this pattern. Women were spraying Febreze after they finished cleaning a room. Not really to kill odors, but as a sort of finishing touch.
Like a little ritual.
Yeah. And they realized the real craving wasn't for an odor-free room. It was for the feeling of satisfaction, of accomplishment, a nice little signal that the chore was done. The reward was emotional.
Okay, so they shifted the marketing.
Completely.
Yeah.
They started advertising Febreze as the spray you use to make a clean room smell even better. The final flourish. They associated it with that feeling of completion.
And suddenly...
Suddenly it's a billion-dollar product because they finally understood the real reward the customers were craving.
That insight is huge. And it leads directly to what Duhigg calls the golden rule of habit change.
The absolute core principle, yeah, which is you can't extinguish a bad habit, you can only change it.
Because it's wired into that primitive brain part, the basal ganglia. Trying to just erase it is like fighting your own wiring.
Exactly. It's exhausting and often fails. The smart way, the golden rule method, is more like habit surgery.
Okay.
You keep the old cue. You can't usually avoid that. You keep the same reward because that's what your brain is craving.
Yeah.
But you consciously insert a new routine between the cue and the reward.
So replace the problematic behavior with something else that delivers the same payoff.
Precisely. But doing that, making that switch when the cue hits, that takes effort. And crucially, it takes belief.
Back to the will to believe.
Duhigg argues this is why groups like Alcoholics Anonymous can be so effective. They provide a community, a structure that helps people genuinely believe change is possible. That belief gives them the strength to implement the new routine, going to a meeting, calling a sponsor when the cue for drinking appears.
That makes sense. And you see this principle in elite performance too, right? Like the Tony Dungy example in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a fantastic illustration. Dungy took over teams like the Buccaneers and Colts and deliberately simplified their playbooks.
Fewer plays. Wouldn't that make them predictable?
You think so. But he caught a smaller number of core plays and drilled them relentlessly, over and over, until they were completely automatic. Habits.
Okay, so the players didn't have to think.
Exactly. When the cue happened on the field, say, a specific offensive formation, his players reacted instantly with the drilled routine. No pause for deliberation. Their opponents might still be processing, deciding. That tiny fraction of a second multiplied across the team gave Dungy's players a speed advantage.
Wow, so he kept the cue, opponent's move, kept the reward, making stop, winning the down, but installed a faster automatic routine.
Textbook golden rule. And those small advantages, those small wins, as Duhigg calls them, they add up. Which brings us to another key idea, keystone habits.
Okay, what's a keystone habit?
It's a habit that, when you change it, triggers a cascade. It starts to dislodge and remake other patterns in your life or in an organization. It has this ripple effect.
Like pulling the right Jenga block causes a whole bunch of others to shift.
Good analogy. The prime example is Paul O'Neill turning around Alcoa, the aluminum company.
Right, it was seen as kind of old-fashioned, bureaucratic.
Yeah, stodgy, struggling with communication, safety wasn't great. When O'Neill came in as CEO, everyone expected him to talk about profits, synergy, the usual corporate buzzwords.
But he didn't.
No. His first speech to investors, he talked about safety, worker safety. That was going to be his priority. People were baffled. Wall Street analysts thought he was nuts.
Why safety? How could that fix the company's core business problems?
Because O'Neill recognized safety could be a keystone habit. He set up a new, very clear habit loop around it, the cue. Any worker injury, anywhere in the world.
Okay.
The routine. The president of that unit had to report directly to O'Neill within 24 hours and include a plan to ensure it never happened again.
Within 24 hours to the CEO. That's intense.
Extremely. And the reward. Promotions, bonuses, career advancement, they became tied to adherence to this safety reporting routine. If you didn't follow the procedure, you wouldn't move up.
But how did enforcing a safety rule fix things like, I don't know, inefficient manufacturing or poor communication between departments?
Because to meet that 24-hour deadline with a credible plan, the unit presidents couldn't rely on the old, slow, siloed systems. They were forced to talk to floor managers immediately. They needed input from workers. They had to streamline communication just to get the report done on time.
Ah, I see. The safety routine forced them to create better communication habits across the board.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It created new channels, broke down hierarchies, improved processes everywhere. Safety was the lever that shifted the entire organizational culture.
And the results were?
Incredible. Alcoa became one of the safest companies in the world. And, not incidentally, by the time O'Neill retired, its net income had grown fivefold. It proved a keystone habit could transform everything.
That's powerful. And it links to another idea that willpower isn't just something you have or don't have.
Right. Duhigg argues willpower is more like a muscle. It gets tired, but you can also train it. It's a learnable skill. And in fact, he says it functions like a keystone habit itself.
And Starbucks is the company that really weaponized this idea, didn't they?
Weaponized might be strong, but they definitely built their business model around it. They know they're not just selling coffee. They need to deliver a consistent, positive experience. A bit of joy, as they put it.
Which means baristas have to handle stressful situations well. Angry customers, complicated orders, busy rushes.
Exactly. Things that require willpower, emotional regulation. So Starbucks systematically trains employees for what they call inflection points.
Those challenging moments.
Yeah. They rehearse routines, how to deal with an irate customer, what to do if a machine breaks down during peak hours. They practice these responses over and over.
So it becomes automatic, habitual.
Right. When the stressful cue hits, the trained routine kicks in. The barista doesn't have to rely on their in-the-moment willpower, which might be depleted. They fall back on the habit.
It's preloaded self-discipline.
That's a great way to put it. And Starbucks found this training not only improved customer service, but also boosted employee morale and commitment, learning that self-regulation spilled over into other areas of their lives.
Okay, so individuals can build willpower habits. Companies can build organizational habits. What happens when companies try to predict and shape our habits as consumers?
Now we get into the really interesting, maybe slightly unsettling, territory of data analysis and marketing. Retailers like Target are masters at this.
They figured out how to predict pregnancies, right?
Famously, yes. They realize that people's shopping habits are most flexible, most open to change during major life events, moving, getting married, and especially having a baby. New parents suddenly need a whole bunch of new stuff.
So Target's data analysts looked for patterns.
Yeah, they correlated purchases like buying large amounts of unscented lotion, cotton balls, certain vitamin supplements, and built a model that can predict with pretty high accuracy not only if someone was pregnant, but also their likely due date.
That's impressive and a little creepy.
It got creepy for customers, too. Initially, Target started sending explicitly baby-focused coupons to these predicted expectant mothers, and people freaked out. How does Target know? Daughters were getting baby mailers before they'd even told their parents.
Yeah, that's a PR problem. How do they fix it?
Pure habit manipulation, essentially. They tapped into the craving for familiarity. They didn't stop sending the baby coupons. They just started mixing them in, camouflaging them amongst totally random normal coupons.
Like diapers next to lawnmower oil?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coupons for wine glasses, then baby clothes, then maybe dog food. Because the overall mailing looked familiar and non-threatening, people stopped noticing the hyper-targeting. The old habit of getting junk mail made the new targeting acceptable. Complaints dropped, sales went up.
Wow, using old habits to sneak in new ones. That same structure of social influence shows up in bigger movements too, doesn't it? Like the Montgomery bus boycott.
Duhigg breaks that down brilliantly using habit principles. He says these large-scale social shifts typically rely on 3 stages.
Okay, what are they?
Stage 1 relies on strong ties. Friendship. The boycott ignited so quickly because Rosa Parks wasn't just some random person. She was deeply respected, well-connected. Her arrest was a powerful cue for her immediate circle of friends and colleagues to act.
So the initial spark comes from close relationships.
Right. But to grow, it needed stage 2, leveraging weak ties. This is about community pressure, social norms. People who didn't necessarily know Rosa Parks personally joined in because their neighbors were doing it, their church members were doing it. Participating became part of maintaining standing in the community.
Peer pressure, basically, but on a massive scale.
Exactly. And stage 3, for endurance, required new habits and a new identity. This is where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was crucial. He provided new routines, nonviolent protest tactics, complex carpooling systems, and he reframed the movement, giving participants a powerful new identity rooted in justice, faith, and self-respect. This fed that deep human need for belief and made the immense sacrifices sustainable.
Strong ties start it, weak ties grow it, new habits sustain it. That framework makes a lot of sense. But all this talk about automatic behaviors and primitive brain parts, it brings up a really tough question about free will, doesn't it? How responsible are we if our habits are running the show?
It's a huge legal and ethical dilemma. Duhigg contrasts two court cases that highlight this. First, Brian Thomas, a man who killed his wife while experiencing a severe night terror.
He was asleep.
Essentially, yes. His lawyers argued his actions were driven by the brain's primitive fight-or-flight response during the sleep disorder, completely bypassing his conscious mind. He was acquitted. The court decided he wasn't acting out of free will.
Okay, so no responsibility there. What's the contrasting case?
Angie Bachman, a woman who developed a devastating gambling habit and lost her family's entire savings and then some. She sued the casino company, arguing they exploited her addiction.
Did she win?
No. The court held her responsible for her debts. The key difference: Bachman knew she had a gambling problem. She recognized the destructive pattern. She tried to get herself banned from the casino before. She was aware of the cues, the routine, the disastrous results.
So the court decided she did have the capacity to try and change the habit, even if it was difficult.
Exactly. The conclusion drawing on this science seems to be, if you are aware of a habit, if you can identify its components, the cue, routine, reward, then you have a responsibility to try to change it if it's harmful. Understanding the loop gives you the tools and therefore the obligation. Ignorance isn't a complete excuse if the potential for awareness exists.
Understanding is the first step toward responsibility and freedom. Okay, so let's make this super practical for our listeners. We've got the theory, the big examples. How do we apply this framework to, say, my annoying habit of grabbing an energy drink every afternoon?
Perfect. Let's use Duhigg's four-step process. He used it for his own cookie habit. Step 1 is simple. Identify the routine.
Okay, easy enough. For me, it's feel tired around 2 p.m., walk to the fridge, grab the energy drink, drink it at my desk. That's the routine.
Got it. Step 2 is the trickiest, but most important. Experiment with rewards. You need to figure out what craving that energy drink is actually satisfying.
It feels like I need energy, the sugar, the caffeine, maybe.
Maybe. But it could also be boredom, or the need for a temporary distraction, or maybe just the physical act of getting up and walking away from your desk. You don't know until you test it.
So how do I test?
When the 2 p.m. urge hits, instead of the energy drink, try a different routine that delivers a different potential reward. One day, eat an apple instead. Does that satisfy the urge? Another day, get up and walk around the office for 5 minutes. Another day, chat with a coworker.
And I need to pay attention to how I feel after each substitute.
Yes. And crucially, write it down immediately. Just a few words. After the apple, still feel tired, bit hungry. After the walk, felt less bored, saw sunshine. After chatting, distracted, felt connection, urge gone. You're looking for the substitute that provides the same underlying satisfaction.
Okay. Duhigg found his cookie craving wasn't about hunger, right? It was about socializing.
Exactly. He realized the reward he was seeking was the temporary distraction and social interaction he got from going to the cafeteria and chatting with colleagues while eating the cookie. The cookie itself was almost incidental.
All right, so let's say I experiment and find that chatting with a coworker for 5 minutes actually kills the energy drink craving. I've isolated the reward. Social distraction, mental break. Now what?
Now, step 3. Isolate the cue. What specific trigger launches the routine? You know the time is around 2 p.m., but is it just the time? Or is it finishing a certain task, getting a boring email, feeling isolated? Look for the consistent pattern right before the urge hits.
Okay, need to be a bit of a detective about my own behavior.
Let's say I realize it's consistently when I hit a mental block on a tough project around 2 p.m. That's the cue.
Perfect. You have the cue, mental block around 2 p.m. You know the reward you're actually craving, social distraction, mental break. And you know the problem, routine, energy drink. Now for the final step, step 4, have a plan.
Make a specific plan for the new routine.
Yes, and write it down. Make it explicit. Something like, when I feel the mental block around 2 p.m. cue, I will get up and walk over to Sarah's desk and chat for 5 minutes. New routine.
So when the cue hits, I don't have to think. I just execute the predefined plan. Exactly. The plan short-circuits the old automatic loop and directs you into the new one, which you know delivers the reward you're actually seeking.
Yeah.
And every time you successfully execute the plan, you strengthen the new pathway and build that belief that change is possible.
That feels doable.
Yeah.
Really practical. Identify the routine, experiment with rewards, isolate the cue, have a plan.
It's a powerful framework because it acknowledges how habits work rather than just fighting against them.
So the big takeaway here really is that understanding these mechanics about cue, routine, reward, craving, that's what gives you agency. It gives you the power to choose your patterns, whether it's something small like an afternoon snack or something huge like turning around a company culture.
It really does. And that leads to maybe a final thought for everyone listening. We talked about how destructive habits can creep into organizations almost unnoticed, like at that Rhode Island hospital where unclear surgical prep habits led to mistakes, or the London Underground fire where staff routines meant no one felt empowered to use the fire extinguisher. These things develop silently over time. So the question for you is, what invisible, maybe seemingly harmless personal habits are running your life right now just because they're familiar? What routines are you accepting today that might actually be setting you up for bigger problems down the road, waiting for some minor crisis to expose them?
Something to definitely think about. Time to identify those cues. Until next time, keep digging.